record what we're saying now. Listeners, no one cares that we're doing Song Wars, and this is making me sad, but I care, and you care, and it's hilarious. So, like, just in case anyone doesn't know what Song Wars is referring to, right? Adam and Joe were some people who had a TV show, and then they were on the radio in England, and it was very funny. And
this is relevant.
It is relevant. And they had songwriting competitions, and they'd set a theme, and it was the best thing ever in the world.
It was good.
It was really good. So then I think I said to you quite a long time ago now, we should do Song Wars, and then nothing happened. And then I was like, no, we really should. And then the other day, we did a song about nature. So you did a song about tawny owl, and I did a song about a beech tree. Yeah. And it was sort of like half-heartedly attempted to get people to vote for which one they thought was best. I'm not going
to ask them this time. I don't care. This is just my own joy.
One person very kindly went, both of them, thumbs up, or something like that. That was the only comment. And I find it funny to imagine like what listeners to podcasts are thinking, and they're like, okay, yeah, forest school, yeah, theory, oh yeah, a book about like, play theory. What the heck? Sorry, what? They're doing songs now.
They've lost the plot.
I'm not here for this. I'm not here for the songs, and I'm sorry, listeners.
This is self-indulgent wank, is what this is.
So you can turn off right now. But honestly, life-changing experience for me making these stupid songs.
This is our version of the artist's way.
It brings me so much joy. It's like proper creative play.
Yeah, it brings my wife a lot of whatever the opposite of joy is, because it quite often happens very quickly that I go, I've got an idea and I must write it and record all of everything in mind other than the drums I recorded. Like in my you
can tell.
And my wife gets, shut your face. And then
no, it's in a good way. In contrast to mine, which is just loop central. I just discovered loops in GarageBand.
But my wife would just poke her head round and go, hello, you said you were just going to do something on the computer for 5 minutes. It's been an hour and a half. Any chance you're coming down? And I go, shh, I've got to double track the bass guitar. Just, in a mania.
So you were channeling
channeling George Ezra, and my wife said, have you heard his new song? He just says the same line for about half the song. It's clearly there so that people can join in at festivals. And I was like, I like that kind of economy. I'm going to write that kind of song.
And that's why you've got so we're going to put it in here, listeners, so you can listen to it. So this is Lewis's song. Lewis, what is your song called? Has it got a name?
It's called Sideways Rain.
Okay, here's Sideways Rain by Lewis.
There's rain inside my boots. She's showing me all of her undesirable attributes, and north winds are blowing cold. Little mouths are hungry, but the bread is covered in mold. Oh, I hate being outside. They said try foreign school, it's great, but I think they lie. Who would choose to be out in the sideways rain? I feel my smile washing it off and spinning down the drain. Scent of tin horns in my nose. A little stick has worked its way in between my toes. Someone just sneezed in their hand and wiped it on my clothes. It's fucking disgusting, but on and on it goes. Why I hate being outside. They said try forest school, it's great, but I think they lie. Who would choose to be out in the sideways rain? I feel my smile washing off and spinning down the drain. I hate being outside. 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 Oh, I hate being outside, being outside, being outside, being. Oh, I hate being outside. They said try forest school, it's great, but I think they lie. Who would choose to be out in the sideways rain? I feel my smile washing off and spinning down the drain. I hate being outside. It's shit and windy. I hate being outside. You get all the coughs and shit in your throat. I hate being outside. You get wet and all your clothes are really heavy. I hate being outside. It's just like snotty, you've got to pack everything away and it's raining and all your tarps are wet and all the rope's wet as well, and then when you untie the knot and the rope whips you across the face and it's like a wet dog's tail just slapping you across the thing. And I hate being outside.
So you were channeling George Ezra, and that's why you have the crowd, of course. There's a whole crowd arrived at your house.
I was recording it, and from outside the window people had gathered.
Oh my god. I found now that you say George Ezra I get it, but I also I heard Adele going on there.
Oh really?
Yeah, the like melody, there's something in there that's quite like an Adele song. Yeah. And
okay,
it's very earwormy.
Yours is loops on loops on loops. Yours is,
it's not actually that many loops. It's just that's all there is. There's my voice.
There's your voice a lot.
There's a lot. There's a lot, but there could have been more loops. There could have been more instruments, but I decided I had to stop somewhere, so I stopped. But my song is called Wind Speed. Here's my song. Check it again. check it again, check it, check it, 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 check it again. Cancel by text or by email, refund or reschedule. Don't know what to do now. Leaves rustle. Leaves and small twigs are constantly moving. Leaves and loose paper are lifted. Small branches move. Small trees begin to sway. Large branches of trees move. Whole trees sway. Twigs and small branches break off trees. Slight structural damage. Trees uprooted. Widespread damage. Devastation. Yeah,
It's strong. It's strong. There's so many. I think it just sounds slightly manic in that, like, I can hear it doesn't sound like, I love it, right? It's a great song. You clearly had a strong theme, but it sounds like you didn't plan each vocal track. You just went back to the start and recorded and then did a bit of singing before you then went, wind, the wind.
Well, layers upon layers upon layers. Yeah, of course. But I'm glad. What word did you just use to describe it there? You were like
manic.
Yeah. So
Street preachers.
That's what I'm channeling, and I know, like, I wrote this song with a lot of feeling in my heart for my peers around the globe who are making Forest School happen despite fucking wind.
Fucking wind, man.
And I am like channeling the energy that we all feel when we're like, holy shit, the wind. Do I cancel? Do I not? Check it again. Like, I don't know what to do. That's my favorite bit.
Do I cancel? Do I not? No.
No, I shouldn't, because mine is check it again. And then my favorite bit of the whole song is the fuzz vocal that goes, don't know what to do. I know I'll check it again. You know, that's what I'll do. That would be the solution.
It does capture the mania of, I bet if I look at the forecast more times, I can somehow affect it. If I stare at that number, it'll come down.
And also the very important question, or two questions: do you cancel by text or by email? And do you refund or reschedule? Because those are questions of the day.
There's not enough songs about admin.
Exactly. There's
not enough booking admin related.
No, there's not enough like Forest School specific booking admin songs in the world. And I'm not even joking. I had a little daydream today that that the song.
Oh no.
Famous. because so many Forest School leaders were like, oh my god, this song, like, she gets it, and I'm gonna put it on my Spotify and I'm just gonna listen to it, and maybe at meetups I will sing it and we'll learn the harmonies. Because, and like, every time any Forest School practitioner looks at the wind speed, just start singing the song.
Oh no!
Just become a little thing that people just go, are you checking it again? Yes, I am. And I just feel so much joy that I did that. God, I'm sorry, it's been quite a long week. Right. I'm done now.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay,
love you, bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
Wem and I are here. We're separated. We're in our own houses, and we're also here with Adam Collett, who is
Legend.
Legend. Man about town, man of the people. I paused because Adam is many things to us. Adam has been a parent and a volunteer, and
that sounded like he was our parent.
He's our parent. Adam is our joint parent.
Yeah. Woodland parent.
But yeah. So we're here because the topic that I wanted to talk about that's been ticking around in my head is to do with Forest School and D&D or Dungeons and Dragons, and Wem is already making faces because
I'm partly making faces not just because of Dungeons and Dragons, but you will have to just like very briefly give me and other listeners who are ignorant of this thing bit of an overview. But I was actually making noises because all of the pets have arrived. All the pets in my house have arrived and they're making different noises and stuff. So that's why I was making a lot of faces. Sorry.
Excellent.
Solid. We will do a description in just a minute, but so it's worth explaining. So Adam is here because Adam sits perfectly in this middle ground of like, Adam has a lot more experience with D&D than me, and also has come to our sessions and has volunteered and knows how we operate. And so in this Venn diagram, Adam, you sit perfectly in the middle, and hopefully I can share some thoughts, and there might be bits where I go, I think it's like this, and you can go, no, it's nothing like that at all. So thank you for spending a bit of time chatting with us.
No, thank you for having me. It's brilliant.
Cool. So some people have already turned off, right? Loads of people have already gone,
D&D? Oh no.
As we discussed before we started recording, Wem is not allowed to shout nerds or not audibly, maybe just on mute.
I'm so sorry. Did you actually already say the actual question? Did you say, is the question like, why is Forest School like Dungeons and Dragons?
The question is basically like, if I was being like a university person, it would be like, to what extent?
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's a hard
Is Forest
line.
School like Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
Or is a forest? Did you say to me once, what are the similarities between being a Forest School practitioner and being like the talky person in Dungeons and Dragons? Yes. What is the talky person?
Master Dragon. No.
Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master or ref or storyteller is the one I particularly like. That's my favorite, is storyteller, is the best description. Yeah.
Okay. So Aj, maybe you can you have words and you're good with them. Can you give us and any other listeners that are like me, like a bit of an overview about what D&D is?
So D&D or Dungeons and Dragons is a role-playing game. There are a number of different systems out there, but it's basically where one person comes up with a world and a storyline and a kind of an idea for a plot that he thinks other people will find fun and interesting. And that person then gets a group of people together and they create characters that exist in that world. And those characters then interact with the story and kind of it then becomes a kind of mutual storytelling experience where you all your characters interact with each other and the made up characters that the storyteller has designed, and you tell a story together. So it's a kind of it's mutual storytelling really, and I find it is an incredible imaginative outlet. It allows for a huge amount of creativity and ideas. Also allows for a really good laugh because very often things get quite silly and funny. Monty Python almost always makes some sort of entrance at some point in any game, and it's just a really fun thing. But it is a very sort of imaginative process and a creative process, and really really good fun.
Well, I was kind of like nodding as you were describing that, because I was like, sounds like Forest School. Like one person like comes up with an idea and and describes it and gets everyone else involved, and then everyone just goes on a bit of an adventure. I was like, that sounds pretty much like a lot of play that you see in the woods, with a bunch of learners who especially know each other well, or maybe even don't, but feel confident enough to launch an idea and make a proposal about like we're all vampires and whatever, yeah. And do you is it exclusively like a kind of grown-up game? Like, do you need a certain amount of kind of understanding and maturity to be able to play it? Like, what's the youngest age
I don't know. I would say sort of 4 or 5 and upwards really can play it and can get involved, because it's like, right, let's play make believe, and if you don't call it Dungeons and Dragons, you call it something else like storytelling. Anyone can join in, because the thing that tends to make it a little bit more complicated is when you start sort of looking at the different rule systems. So Dungeons and Dragons is one type of rule system that says what your characters can do and how they do it, and they have different scores in things that mean they can do different things. So one might have a particularly high score in strength, that means they can lift up really heavy things and do that sort of stuff. And depending on how complicated the rules are, probably that's the only thing that would sort of decide what age group it was suitable for. In terms of the storytelling, I personally prefer a lot more of the open format storytelling, where the story is the most important thing and the rules are kind of just there in the background just to keep things ticking along and working okay. And that's very much my preferred method. Some people prefer the other extreme, which is to have all the rules and be rolling dice all the time to figure out how things happen and the random chance element and all of that. And have lots of numbers on a piece of paper that say their character can make tea in 30 seconds or things like that. So it's different extremes of different game systems are different, but it all does. I think one of the key things when you were just saying about Forest School there, I think one of the key similarities, it creates a really safe space where you can just launch ideas and just go, I want to be one of these, and everyone goes, oh, cool, and just joins in, and it's that safe space that allows you to then explore all sorts of creative ideas that make it really good fun.
So it sounds like also you're saying that if you're thinking about like play types, that you're describing some formats have more rules or dice or not and all those kind of things, that you can kind of, it sounds like it will sort of weave in between different types of play there as well, and you're kind of making the play frame quite different depending on what you decide to agree upon.
And also of course depending on your setting, because it's all completely imagined, and very often it's people sat around a table talking these things through. You can have any setting from like Victorian London all the way through to space age, aliens and different planets. So it allows for a huge range of different imaginative experiences and different play types. Because depending on your setting, and depending on the people involved as well, and as you're saying, sort of age ranges, obviously, you can have some quite sort of adult themes, sort of things that are a bit more violent, a bit more dangerous and that sort of stuff. You can have some sort of really sort of fairy tale themes, and so it allows for a vast scope of sort of different explorations in terms of creativity and play and the sort of styles that might be used. So so you can have things that are more like your sort of perhaps sort of like your Marvel Punisher type sort of theme, which is quite dark and sinister, or you can have something that's more like your sort of I don't know, let me think. I'm just trying to think of like a sort of like a kids TV show or something like that is a very sort of imaginative sort of creative world where everything's sort of very sort of bouncy and fluffy and nice and happy, and so you can have all those different sort of versions and layers of things. And what's interesting is you tend to find the games sort of develop and change of their own volition. So the person who's designing it, the storyteller, might have one idea about how they think their world's going to be, but then the input and the interaction of the other players into that can change that completely and turn it around and make it a whole different thing. And I think that's the nice thing, is that provided nobody's sort of too rigid about it, it allows this sort of exploration of what do we want our world to be. And it's a very joint creative thing that gets everybody involved, and it's quite inclusive. So
it's making me think. You're thinking of those extremes. I was playing with my son this morning, and one of the things that his character can do is I think something called like cutting words or something on the sheet. It's a very specific spell and whatever. But for, he's 5. He was calling people toilet heads, and that was him like
excellent
in a fight in the middle was just shouting, "You're a toilet head," and that was doing damage to somebody that was trying to attack him. And he was just, my daughter's obsessed with like she's worked out that one of them can make magic bubbles. So she just keeps going, I do bubble. I do big bubble. I do big bubble. I do big all the time. And yeah, you know that thing of when all you've got is a hammer, all she's got is a bubble. So every problem can be fixed with a bubble.
Awesome.
It does make me think though, there's something in there about that like random chance element and the safe space-ness, which is that, from my experience at least, when you're creating the story together, you're sort of proffering this idea of like, I'd like my character to do this, or I'd like this to happen. And then the dice introduce that idea of like, okay, that's your like ultimate goal. You're going to roll it to see how achievable that is. And it takes away any sort of like when we would do like storytelling in the woods, you might sometimes get stuff thrown at you that is like, in the middle of a story, a kid goes like, and there was a robot, and sometimes you can go along with that and be like, yeah, sure, there's a robot. Sometimes you have to be like, I'm in the middle of Puss in Boots, and this is like less appropriate than it might otherwise be. But adding that, like, I don't want to call it like dispassionate random chance, but the fact that like, it's not you who's leading the story that's gone like, no, you didn't hit that person. You just roll it and you just go like, well, that number's come up. We all experience this like bad luck, in inverted commas, sort of together.
Do you think that reminds me of like when people are playing an amazing role play game, like loads of learners are like in it, and then one person goes, and my character can make things levitate, and then another person, often the person who like created the world in the first place, goes, no, there are no magical powers in this game. And the person goes, no, but except for me, because I can make stuff levitate. And the person who created the world goes, you're not listening. There is no magic in this world. It is just real. It is just swords and sticks, and there's no magic. And whether you could just at that moment, like, you know, when you're watching and you're like, oh, how's this going to go? Is there anything I can do to help? You know, passions are rising. Is it going to mean that this game's over? Maybe that's okay. You know, are they going to be able to work it out? Or can you just like, ta-da, here are some dice. What do the dice say?
If you take it wider than that, though, there's something about like, if you go up a level, then you could look at that as like, not just on the play level, but on a forest school leader level. We make up this fantasy world, right? We make up this world that is forest school, and we talk to this tree, and we do all this, you know, wonky bullshit. And you and I are holding that as like, we've made up this space. And then the learners come in and they interact like characters in the game who are playing with it. And it's as much of an experience for us when you're running one of these games. You see these people going, okay, that clearly wasn't in my original story, but you've come up with a really creative way to solve that problem. So I will like remove my ego from this situation, and we just go with it. In the same way that at a forest school group, as long as it's not like derailing what's happening and hurting people and whatever else, you would hope that leaders are also having that thing of like, okay, I've made this world, but now we're all, you know, like I've set this play space up, but now we're all creating it together, and there's some give and take here, and there's some, there's some movement, rather than it being like, I'm telling you a didactic story, you sit there and listen. It's a collaborative effort. And I think that's one of the big shared things that I see between the two. Would you say, Adam, that's...
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, because I think it's all about those things that, as you mentioned the word sort of derailed, it's that sort of allowing sort of extremes of imagination without kind of overturning the kind of original idea. And that can be quite tricky, because they're particularly with younger people, you know, because they do, as Wem said, you know, they do just kind of go, I want to do this, and somebody else goes, but no, you can't do that. That doesn't work here. And that is very tricky. And that's kind of with role play and D&D, that's kind of where the rules come in, because the rules say, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. So you've got that kind of structure there behind it as well. One of the interesting things that popped into my head was when we ran a game that was very sort of open and free form many years ago. This was adult players, sort of in their 20s, lots of film background. And so we decided, instead of dice, we would have a system where if your character wanted to perform something and do something, provided you could come up with an appropriate movie quote, it happened. And if you couldn't come up with a movie quote, it didn't happen. And so you could do all sorts of things, but that was really nice, because it kind of took away all the rules and dice and everything, and still made it really creative and fun, and got you thinking. And that was really nice, because that was a really kind of creative way to kind of go, can you do that or can you not? And I wondered, is there some element of that could be incorporated, that, if you can do this thing, then okay, you can have that awesome power, or you can do this awesome thing, but you've got to do something creative to kind of earn it and get that. And that then takes away a lot of the structure and the physical thing of dice and all of that. But actually, I would argue kind of enhances the creativity. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, to kind of see, where do you draw your lines and your boundaries and your rules? And that's always, I think, and having been to forest school, it is, because forest school is very much about, well, off you go, kids, you decide your boundaries and your rules, and you figure that stuff out, because that's part of what it's all about, is you figuring out where are the boundaries, and who says that you can't have flying things in this universe, and who says that you can only have swords. And so it's very interesting. But that's where D&D would have a rule structure, but actually in forest school it's kind of like, how does that get established? Where who sets that, and as you say, Liz, who kind of holds that? Is it the forest school leaders? Is it the kids themselves? Is it how does that work? So but those similarities very definitely
I've been thinking about what you're saying about kind of rules and structure. I guess, can you call it like constraints? And I don't know, I was reflecting back on when I used to teach drama, and how, I don't know why I was thinking about this, but a lot of the time I might kind of set an activity for the class and go, right, you're in a group of 4 or 5, and I'm going to invite you to do this, 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 and this, create a piece, whatever. However, only 2 people are allowed to be sitting down at one time, or only, and you'll kind of like invent like 1 or 2 constraints, or like it, but you have to do it without speaking, or you can, do you know what I mean? Like those kind of constraints, which then for some reason, even though you would think it would do the opposite, it kind of like completely imbues them with creativity and makes it somehow, because you've made a play frame, I guess. Is it a play frame? Would you call it that? I don't know. Anyway, you've made this kind of structure that then I think does something to our brains. What is it doing? Why is that? Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, okay, well, if you just said do a thing, I might get a bit lost. But because I know I can't do this, I can do this, and I can't do this, and it has to be like this, I'm now going to like, maybe looking at it in a bit of a sort of problem solving way, and hang something. It's something to hang it on, perhaps, I don't know. But I wonder if that's also why, if left to their own devices, learners playing in the woods will start inventing their own rules, like, no, you can't do that because, or there's only this, that, and the other, and la la la. And to an outsider it can look quite harsh often, with the way it's being uttered as well. It can be like, no, this is not allowed, or, we're only doing this right now. But whether that's having the same effect in terms of like, well, this is a thing to hang it on, and it's actually going to spark more creativity in the play and keep the play cycle going, even though to our observers' eyes it might look like it's having the opposite
effect. It something to do with like, is it like because I think I can hear what you're saying, and I've always wondered if that is to do with like self-regulating low arousal, in that like if anything can happen in the game. So we talk about low arousal approaches in terms of like it being understood and there being clear, kind of like a visual timetable is a really good example of low arousal approach, because if you just turn up and you go, anything you want, see you in 2 hours, crazy scary. Whereas having something to hook on and go, it'll be this, and then this will be out, and then it will be time for this. And in the same way that actually role play for children is like high arousal, because in theory there could be dragons and space people and like, you know, magic powers and bazookas all in the same way. So like children's creating rules is like their self-regulating low arousal in terms of like, I can't deal with it being anything. So I'm going to put these things in. And like what D&D's done is kind of invites you to just have that conversation very openly at the start in a way that like, because again, for lots of adults, I think when I was doing teacher training, they once put out a load of Lego on the floor, and this is a group of us in our like very early 20s, and they went, just play like you're 5. And I mean, someone went off and did like awful, they just did like acting like they were 5. They weren't playing like they were 5. Wasn't the same. And like part of that was just everybody just froze because that's too big. Whereas if it had been like, okay, you're a child who's building a castle and you want your castle to be able to shoot something, we'd have all done it because we'd have made it more low arousal. And like with children's play at Forest School, there's some stuff to hang on to make it low arousal. There's some stuff they work out through the play, and there's some stuff that is like pre-decided. And in the same way, I think D&D has that thing of giving adults a chance to play, because it takes away that anxiety of like, well, I can't just go and like, what I really want to do, and where I feel like this will speak to you, is like, what I really want to do is like waltz around with some of my good friends pretending we're Victorians. I want to like go around and go, oh, good day, Wem. How are you? Shall we promenade? And do all this like rubbish. But that's too big and weird and scary and whatever else. So if you suddenly go, oh, we're in a game and the game has these rules, shall we play this game?
Or you're going to like a working men's club in East London where the night is called that, and so you know what the dress code is, and you know that everyone else is going to be dressed like that too, and it's just really friendly and nice and inclusive. Yes, I know that feeling. And all the men are wearing braces and they're all really polite. It's really good. Yeah, no, I can see that.
One of the things you said there about what sort of kind of triggered in my brain was that problem solving bit, and that's very much something that comes across very strongly in role play a lot of the time. Is, you know, once you've got a set of rules, you will have those people that will figure out how to get the absolute maximum out of those rules.
How to break it.
So when you put that sort of framework in place, you kind of then got a lot of people who go, oh, right, so if I'm allowed to do that, I'm allowed to do that, and I'm allowed to do that, I can make one of these. And yeah, we'll use the rule system almost not quite against itself, but yeah. And I think very often that's part of the enjoyment, is kind of like, right, these are the rules. So, okay, that means I can do that, that, and that, and that. And I think, as you're saying, Lewis, with like the sort of low arousal thing, it's, yeah, you've got that basic framework in place. That gives you that kind of, okay, here's my comfort zone. Cool. Okay, yeah. But that then means I can do this and this and this and this and this. And you start to develop from there and kind of use the rules to allow that play to happen. And that's when it becomes fun and really enjoyable. And then obviously, hopefully what happens is story and kind of shared experience develops from there as well. So yeah.
Do you think that the forest is also a constraint in Forest School? The way you were saying, oh, if I've got this, and this, then I can do X, Y, and Z. So like, we don't have electricity. No, we don't have running water. No, we don't have any things made of plastic. No, we don't have a telly. No, we don't. Do you know what I mean? Like loads of stuff that we don't have. So you can look at what the forest offers you in terms of like, oh my God, there's so much inspiring just stuff there, you know, there's so many loose parts, there's so many things you can act with, but there's also loads of stuff that there isn't. And I think that sometimes if you're looking at different types of play, like mastery play or kind of creative play, where learners are kind of making something maybe out of wood or out of natural materials, that a lot of the constraint there with, well, this is all I've got, and no, I don't, oh God, what would be easy would be if I had an electric mixer to mix up this clay to be like, oh, I don't have it. Okay, I'm going to do this instead then. And that's how like really cool things end up being made, or like interesting processes happen, because almost like the setting like you're describing the world of D&D, it's like, well, the world of the woods, the physical world, not just the kind of imaginary world.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it.
And that it does one of the other constraints, like, which is, again, this is like with this massive crossover thing, is like when you play D&D, more often than not, you have like a mixed party. You don't all play. So they have like a set list of, you can be a fighter or a wizard or a thief or a whatever, you choose whatever. And then as you approach the problems, you sort of collaboratively proffer things and go, I wonder if you could sneak, or I wonder if we could facilitate you managing to do this thing. Oh, you're not quite strong enough here. So what if we help you and then you can do that thing? And in the same way, that collaborative like nature, and not looking at people's differences as like, oh, you're not very strong. Oh, you're a bit like this. Oh, you're, charisma is one that I've seen in almost every system. Like, you're not very charismatic and stuff like that. And like, yeah, you can have like low charisma. You just try and do stuff. God. And it's like, you try and talk to the barmaid and you just roll it. And then it's like, oh, she hates you and thinks that you're a dick for no particular reason.
Can I just ask you a question? Do you see like different groups at Forest School and just go, low charisma, low strength, high strength? Put them in like D&D categories. Go, you're like, are there set characters like ogres and dragons and stuff, or do you decide what they are?
So you've got your sort of set character, kind of as Lewis was saying, your set character, what they call classes. So things like fighter, monk, wizard, and they have sort of a set of stats that kind of suit a character best. So you kind of, the way you start is you kind of roll your basic statistics. So that's like your strength, your dexterity, your wisdom, your intelligence, and those sorts of things. From those, you tend towards a certain type of character that would fit those best. And then, as Lewis was saying, it's then about those characters kind of coming together and interacting and using each other's strengths to kind of go, right, as a group, we can achieve this. But if I went off on my own, I could only achieve that. And so that's where the kind of the whole sort of classic view of it being an adventuring party, a group of people like set off with the ring to go to Mordor, kind of, all that sort of thing.
But you strip it down, and it's also, because my children are also reading Famous Five, and I always think that there's a massive similarity there in terms of like the children are all different ages and different abilities, and it's that thing that I think again works in our Forest, in our home ed group, because they're mixed age, that like it's collaborative efforts for the most part. But then so I was wondering as well, Wem and I have talked before in storytelling podcasts about storytelling being a safe place to experience like big emotions, and like storytelling in a linear didactic sense being like, Wem and I can stand at the front, we can tell a story that's very tense or very scary or whatever, and people sit there and all their mirror neurons are going off and they're also feeling those things. And then I think I would have thought that the next step is then to like act those things out, like to go up and go like, right, I'm going to get my stick and I'm going to go and play Robin Hood with some other children. But for some children, that's too big of a step because they're suddenly immediately in physical danger. It's like you've been given autonomy and physical consequence in the same like handful. Whereas I do think D&D sits in this middle step between like, it's not a story you're being told. You have agency. You have the ability to go, I'm going to run up to this thing that's sleeping and I'm going to like smack it on the butt or whatever it is. And then
can I just interrupt you just very quickly? I want you to carry on that train of thought, but can you clarify for me, like when you say and run up to this thing and smack it on the butt, you're not physically running, you're a little piece on a board, are you?
Or just completely imagined. You can just be there going, I run up and smack it on the butt.
Yeah, you explain what your character's going to do. Yeah.
Okay, got it. But do some people dress up in real things
that's
and run around?
LARPing. That's live
role play. Live role play, which is a different thing. And that is kind of an extension of what Lewis is talking about with like going and playing Robin Hood. So what we're talking about at the moment is Dungeons and Dragons, what we call tabletop, where you're sat around a table and you just describe what your character does verbally. So you say, as Lewis says, I'd run up to the sleeping dragon and whack it on the butt. And then you would have live role play where you would take a pretend rubber sword that's not going to hurt anyone, and you'd actually walk up to someone and smack them on the butt gently. Obviously it's not too violent, but that is more immersive because you're actually going to go and do it. So arguably that is sort of triggering a lot more kind of
and that's what I mean. You've really got
okay,
your physical body is entered into that play space in a way that doing a completely tabletop based thing, which is just like you sit there and you say, I smack it in the butt, and then you still, it's something about having that agency and being able to explore all those things that I think for some learners is really valuable, and is possibly like a tool that we can have in our back pockets as we meet different learners to go, okay, this is actually quite a big step for you. And also we talk about this all the time, but like experiencing those risks, and those risks not just being physical risks. So I was doing this with very low rules the other day with a group of learners, just round the table. They all just had a D20, so it's a dice that goes up to 20, and just at points they were just going, I want to try and do this, blah, blah, blah. I want to try and do this, and I was just taking that number anyway. And they had this really interesting interaction with it was just a fox, and they had just tried so many things to get into this fox's house before they knocked on the door and said, hello, are you there? And so I got to step out of myself for a minute and just go, no, I'm not going to help you. You've just tried to kick the shit out of my house. Like there were social consequences to their actions, but they were so low, this is an imaginary fox, and they weren't really losing anything and they weren't getting anything out, but they got to take some social risks. They had agency to take social risks and see what came out of that. And
the other thing that it also allows is that sort of conversational experimentation. If I say this, what's somebody's reaction going to be? Oh, okay, what if I said this? Oh, that's what their reaction's going to be. And so it does allow that kind of, again, as we've said several times, sort of that safe space to try stuff out and see what happens, knowing that you're going to get a reasonably realistic consequence, but it's not going to be perhaps as dangerous or negative as it could be in the sort of full real world, as it were. So and I think that's one of the things that role play does allow is you can sort of try out an awful lot of things and see, what does that feel like, what's that,
and try out stuff that you wish you not I was going to say wish you were, but that's not right. What I mean is like you can exaggerate and diminish parts of your own personalities as you choose who you're playing in this story. You might not be a particularly physically active person, but you can play a character who is an absolute gymnast and can squeeze through tight spaces and all that stuff, or you can play someone who's very charismatic and gets through and charms people and sings a lovely song, and everybody goes along. And I think that's another place where Forest School's got this overlap, is not completely, but we do sort of suspend reality once we're in the woods, in terms of we want to be holistic in terms of bringing in experiences and knowing about the learners holistically. But if all their other experiences they are the youngest of 6 children, let's say, and they are always going to be bottom of the pile, or they're always self-sufficient, then they could experiment with what it's like being a person who is looked after in a different way, or who is the top dog and the leader of a group. And we do sort of suspend our disbelief and play characters in the woods. And in teaching in general, I think, is playing a character to a greater or lesser degree, which has got to be a sort of a muscle to stretch, right?
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I'd say kind of coming out of that as well at role play, and I think Wem's going to just go nerd at this point, because I've always argued that actually very often my experiences in role play have led to me being able to achieve things in the real world that I wouldn't have ever attempted, because I've had that kind of practice and that kind of trying things out. So very often, like, you know, the example I very often use is like job interviews, you know, and you go, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a really confident and successful person, and I'm going to play that character for the hour that I'm in that job interview. And so it allows you to kind of experiment with and try out those skills and develop those skills that are sort of verbal and conversational, and as you say, but it's all about that kind of safe space and knowing that you're with people that get it and understand it, and you can trust, and you can be more angry than you might normally be, or you can be more upset than you might normally be, or you can you can sing instead of talking, or you can try out all these different things that might make you feel a bit weird and a bit embarrassed or a bit shy or a bit whatever, but because you're in that safe space, you can try them out, see how they feel, and then if you have to use them elsewhere later on, you kind of know where that space is then, and you can access that and kind of go, I know I can do this now because I tried it out there and it was okay. And it's it just allows you to try out those things and experiment with those things that perhaps you wouldn't if you didn't have that safe space to do that.
In my head, I've just got you rolling dice outside an interview. Just
get the pizza.
Just rolling for charisma outside an interview. Nat 1, immediately sneeze all over yourself. Hello. Just that level. I want to talk about.
I love it. Sorry, go on.
Well, no. One of the things I wanted to talk about was like there is something I wrote down as a thought, which is like it is a barrier. I'm not going to say it's a negative, but it's a barrier that both these things share, which is like it's potentially inaccessible to people who feel like they don't know enough. So, in the outdoor sense, there's a lot of, and some of it, you know, people lean into. There's some real outdoor snobbiness in certain communities about if you don't. You know, if you're not bushcraft survival heavy, or if you can't name every flower, or even not that those things are said, but people feel like, oh, I can't go camping because I can't light a fire on my own, or people put it on themselves and go, I can't access the outdoors because I don't see myself represented there, or I don't do all those things. And similarly, D&D has, I think, this thing of, look, it's a nerdy thing, or it's a fucking nerdy thing, right? It definitely is. But it is also slightly like gatekeeping-y by some of the people in it to say, well, you can't join if you don't know all 43 races of elves, or people going, well, I'm not sure I want to do that because I've watched one person play it and God, they did voices and they were all dressed up and they did all this, and like both communities need some work on being accessible and bringing people in and sort of showing the different. And I think Forest School is working on that, at being like, you know, we're going to people and going, look, we're meeting them where they are. And D&D also, I think, maybe needs some PR work to be meeting people where they are and be going, okay, why don't you just tell a story? Day one, let's just tell a story. And you can, like, you know, do you know what I mean? Does that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think from the role play D&D side of things, I think, again, it's starting to try and open up. Things like cosplaying have really kind of opened a door to people to go, okay, what's the next step? I can dress up as my favorite Marvel superhero, but oh, okay, I can actually go and pretend to be my favorite Marvel superhero. Okay, that's pretty cool. And so I think there's more and more opportunities coming up to access it. But yeah, I would totally agree. I think very often there's that kind of geeky, nerdy stigma that people have about it. And oh God, I don't want to role play because that's just for people that just read loads of books. And so yeah, I think there is a huge amount of PR that could be done to improve it. And I think there's a lot of games that come out that are much more simple. And there's a lot of board games that kind of tried to bridge the gap. So there's a lot of sort of board games where you perhaps build the map as you go, and things like that allow that sort of little bit of creativity, but it's still a very kind of structured, it's just a board game, you know. And I think so there are some of these sort of stepping stones to it. But yeah, I think that's it's that sort of PR thing. How do you get it out to a wider audience? And as you say with Forest School, you know, same sort of thing. It's like, you know, people are becoming more and more aware of it, more understanding of it, and a lot of people are starting to get it better than they did, you know, 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, it is kind of like, yeah, what is the best way to kind of encourage people and get people to see it working and see what it does? And yeah,
they both suffer from being best viewed in the long term. Like, yeah, both if you watch a 2-minute clip of someone doing Dungeons & Dragons, role playing, whatever else, that looks mental and there's so much going on, and then you go, why are they rolling that? Hang on, he was telling the story, now she's doing a bit, why are they doing a voice? And in the same way that if you took a 2-minute snippet of a day long at Forest School, you would go, the hell, how is this pedagogy? He's got a stick, she's trying to set that on fire, these people are doing this isn't a thing. Do you know what I mean? So and so it can seem like quite a big investment to get involved in either, but they both are really important, that they are long, they're slow, they're long form. It's long form content. It's not, it can't really work on the, you know, YouTube shorts or TikTok or anything like that. Would you say that's fair, when that is possibly one of the barriers, is like the long formness of it?
I think I was just trying to ask myself the same question, because I've never really seen any like short bits of Dungeons and Dragons. I definitely think there's a thing about it, you know, like you're describing Forest School from an outsider's point of view, being like quite, you know, very outdoorsy, bushcrafty, and therefore not a place for some people, whereas actually, you know, as long as you can bear to be outdoors for the length of the session at some point, then anyone can go. And I think there is a thing about Dungeons and Dragons having an image that it is for certain people. Like, as we've been talking about it, I'm like, I go, oh yeah, no, I do remember like stuff about this. And I've got this image of like a shop in like the nearest big town to my teenage home, just being full of like really like tall, like older teenage boys wearing like long leather black jackets, like down to the floor, and big boots, and maybe with some different colors in their hair, and we go, yeah, I don't know what that is, I'm gonna just keep walking.
I was one of those tall teenage boys.
You still are, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and therefore that if you're not one of those people, then it probably isn't a space for you. But I'm loving how you guys are talking about it in a way that makes me think that it is the kind of play that our learners are doing at Forest School, but for grown-ups. And like, we deserve to play like that too. Like, you know, and what other spaces do we get to do that in the way that you're describing, that is kind of, not like a board game, not like I'm just going to go, you know, follow the rules and do these things and, oh, you know, you won. Like, I can't find it quite hard to keep my attention with those kind of things. But something, that genuinely, as you're describing, Adam, that kind of just playing, like actually playing. Okay, I'm going to pretend to be. And I'm thinking about, because as you were talking, I was like, oh, is that a bit like amateur dramatics? Is it a little bit like that?
Very much so.
Kind of, maybe a bit, but then you've also got, you're usually following a script in that sense, or you know, you're your character for the whole time, and it's just this that you're describing just sounds way more playful even than that, you know, and quite unique. So yeah, sign me up. I had a question though about like the dungeon master storyteller kind of character. So do they have and I'm thinking about the like link between them and Forest School practitioner, do they have a role as well in the game, or are they just
so they basically provide all the extras, if you like. So if you're thinking about it in terms of a film, you'd have so I don't know, let's go with the Lord of the Rings, because so you've got Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf, the hobbits, those are all the players. Yeah. All the other parts, so Saruman, the orcs, the horsemen of all those parts would be voiced / played by the storyteller. So they provide the setting and all of what we would refer to as the non-player characters, the non-players. So anyone you meet, so your characters walk into a bar and want to speak to the person that owns the tavern, that will be the storyteller. They then go off to meet the mayor to get a job, and off they go. They meet the mayor. The mayor is the storyteller. So the storyteller has all these different characters that they have to manage. And I mean, games I've run, I've had like thick folders full of all the different characters that I may have to play at any given moment, depending on where they go and what they decide to do. And then I will write several different story arcs depending on which route they decide to go, because they might decide they're off to the coast to hire a pirate ship and sail across the sea, or they might decide they're going to go for an adventure in the woods. And as the storyteller, you've kind of got to be prepared for anything. Then you've got to be like, okay, well, they could do all of these things. And when you sort of start what I've posed in sort of computer game terminology would be like a sandbox environment where you can kind of literally do anything. You've then got to kind of be quite quick thinking and creative yourself as a storyteller to kind of adapt what your world does to what they decide to do. So there is a certain element of planning, there's a certain element of understanding, and you are providing the sort of the whole backdrop to their story, really.
This is forest school, mate.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Exactly. Yeah,
it is. It's like both on a literal level in terms of you will end up being the bit part characters in a group of learners role play when they want you to. So they'll come up and be like, I'm just thinking about like, do you remember the shopkeeper?
The storekeeper on Minecraft Day.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God, that was the funnest thing.
And his happy cousin. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Adam and I used to run. So we used to run.
Cousin.
No, we used to run. This was the balancing act that we ended up hitting, which was we would run this. So for people listening, we would run this like fake Minecraft Day in the woods. This is 4 or 5 years ago now. And they would collect painted stones in the woods, and then they would bring them to the shopkeeper, which was me in a very big,
depending on the day.
Yeah, right. But when it was me and Adam, it was me in a very big poncho, and I was foul, like absolutely horrible to them in a way that is like bordering on whoa, pull it back now, mate. And so the balancing act was then that I would sometimes go away, and Adam was the all too generous. Adam was giving away shit for free. He was just nice, and like that gave them a world to interact with. That they were then like, they would come to the shop and they would see me and they'd just turn around. They would just fuck it, come back later when the other guy's on shift. Like, and again, it's that social playing. None of them, when we broke for lunch or whatever, none of them really held it against us and went like, Lewis, you were doing this. And they were gone, right? It was like, I don't like the mean shopkeeper.
And they'd say that to you and I, wouldn't they? They'd actually talk to us as though that was someone else. Absolutely. Yeah.
But sorry, Wem, you were saying.
I used to have a rabid dog when I was a shopkeeper. That it was a log with a face painted on it and a lead. But it used to attack people. I bloody love that. Anyway. So in that literal sense, but also in the kind of symbolic sense of arranging the world of the play, it's like, okay, today you're in this kind of mood, you need to do this kind of thing. Okay, cool, I can do that. What have I got in terms of, what have I got in the folder? What have I got in the cabin? What have I got in my bag? What have I got in the back of my brain that will continue this play cycle for you?
I wanted to touch on one of the things that I think is interesting is like the idea of like it being free reign. And so you can take that example of like us being the shopkeepers in this, in air quotes, the shopkeepers in these games. And like there's an idea that when you're playing a game, if you're not careful, it can become the players versus the storyteller, and like that problem solving can move into, how do we beat you? How do we break your plan? How do we ruin the story? Like, oh, you're clearly setting it up so that we like are going to this castle. Well, we're not going to go to the castle. We're going to go and see if there's a like B&Q down the road, and like, or, you know, trying to break it in this, which is a thing that, you know, I've seen can happen. And similarly, I think that you can end up with that relationship between leaders and learners, in terms of like, if either one is pushing too hard and you meet resistance, you can end up with that like, it's like demand avoidance in a session sense. It's like, oh, you want us all to sit down and do the circle. Oh, well, what if I don't? What if I break your game? What if I do? You know, you can see people when they're new to a group kind of go like, what happens if I don't like play the chasing game? And you can either be someone that goes, well, that, you know, you are doing that and really fight, push, or you just go a bit more fluid and, oh, okay, well, you're there, doing whatever, you know, and avoid that competitive nature. And then I also wanted to talk about whether you think it's different. So Adam, you've been running and different campaigns and groups and things for a long time, and Wem and I have been running now our home ed group has been going for, you know, pandemics excluded, years and years on the trot. And then what I've picked up from both communities is like the difficulties that people can have entering an established group.
Yeah.
Because you might have a tabletop game where you go, this is the 4 of us, 4 adults playing, and we're going to play until we get to the end resolution. But you might have one where you go, well, we've been playing this ongoing game for 2 years. Friend of mine's really interested. Can they come join in? Which is not dissimilar to, you know, oh, somebody new is joining this long-term forest school group, and all the things that you have to do culturally to bring that person in.
Yeah. I mean, that's in game terms, it's quite interesting. It depends. I suppose it depends who they are in the real world and what their relationship status is with the rest of the group before they join. I think, it's quite an interesting one with role play. If, you know, if you've got a really good group and everyone is really welcoming, then it's brilliant, because all the other players help the new person to understand the rules and figure out how the dice work and talk stuff through. And then they, very often, what I tend to find happens with things like that, though, is you start off with that person being very, very quiet for the first 3 or 4 sessions. Once they've seen what everybody else does and establish where the boundaries are, they then go, oh, cool, so I can do all this. And they're like, boom, and then they open up. So very often it is, you will have that kind of like, oh my God, what is this? How does this work? Right at the start. And then 3 or 4 sessions down the line, it's kind of like, oh, right, I get it now. And it kind of works. But it can be very difficult. And I think, sometimes you have to face the reality with role play. I think certainly I found over the years that occasionally some people just don't fit with that group and don't work with that group, and you can get sort of internal conflicts, which again, as storyteller, you are then almost then adjudicator over, because you've got to try and sort of smooth those over and allow things to happen, and but not allow people to get upset with each other and it to cause unfortunate things to happen. Because I think that's where, you know, it can be quite tricky. But I think it generally speaking, in my experience, because you've got an open system and an open world where, you know, pretty much anything can happen and people can explore in a safe place, that's generally quite a welcoming and inviting place to be. And initially people are quite nervous about it, but very often settle into it quite quickly once they realize how kind of accepting it is. And I think it kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about, you know, the sort of the accessibility of these things is, you know, you get a lot of groups that are really welcoming and open and like, yeah, come and join in, come and see what it's all about. Yeah, great. And you get other groups are like, well, we do it this way, and it's very, you know, it's very prescribed, and we only want these sorts of people, and can be quite discriminatory. And I think that, you know, that's just the nature of it very often is, you know, there's a certain, I would argue in D&D, there's a certain elitism sometimes. And I think a lot of it very open and accepting and will welcome new people. But I do think there are still those pockets of elitism that can very often, unfortunately, put new people off and kind of have them go, no, I tried that, didn't like it. And it's kind of like, just because it was an unfortunate group they were with, it's quite difficult. So I think there's a lot of that in there. And I think those new people, provided you've got the right group and it's an accepting group, very quickly fit in and explore and start to open up and really enjoy it. But yes, I think if you get the wrong group, can be a bit tricky.
It sounds similar to the conversations that can go on between forest school leaders in terms of like, because there is a big thing in D&D and tabletop games of like, it's called homebrew, where you're just like, so you can buy these, I'm saying this for WEM's benefit, people's listening, you can buy these like big thick manuals that have in it all the characters you might need and all the places they might go and what the story arc basically is and all of these things. So you don't have to be like master improviser, I can come up with a story. You can buy these books and go, we're going to go on the adventure of Cthulhu, dunk, we're going to do this. And to me, that's like buying your forest school lesson plans. That's the like, I can buy this thing and I can run forest school. You probably can. If you're new to it, that might be a helpful thing if you want some grounding. But there's also this huge like homebrew, DIY, budget together, like, fuck it, I've not read any books and I'm going to pull this monster in and I'm going to use this mechanic and all the characters are going to be, I've watched one that's all typical D&D stuff, but it's all set in a 1950s high school. So there are cool vampires going like, hey, doing proper, what's the word? Jets and sharks and whatever it is from West Side and all this stuff. And like, I feel like Forest School equally has that, like, there is touches of elitism in terms of like, you're not doing this properly. And however people want to decide what properly is. And then there's also this like janky subculture of like, fuck it, I collected all the bones and I've put a badger back together. It took me, and I think that's something that they've both got in common, is this like budget attitude, this like budget subculture, and that's a lot more accessible.
Yes, it tends to be a lot more open and inclusive. It just suddenly made me think, as you were saying about the different homebrew things. There's one that I absolutely love and I really, really want to play, which is D&D, but everything is like a woodland creature. Yes, so like you play like mice and voles and like bees, and it's just a fantastic idea, just awesome creatively. But
sort of like Wind in the Willows, but more
kind
anarchistic.
I was thinking of the animals of Farthing Wood.
That sort of thing.
Did you ever read, and not to show off my nerd credentials, but do you ever read the Redwall books? Do you remember them? They were like really thick books, and they all had little mice on the front.
I gave it a go, but got bored.
Crusaded.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Little mouse and a breastplate and like a helmet and the sword and a rapier. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Amazing. Right, we have waffled and taken up a lot more of your evening than I thought we had. So thank you, Adam.
Thanks so much.
It's great. So hopefully some people listening have maybe we'll spark some people to go. Maybe we've convinced Wem to go in.
I'm convinced. I think it sounds very, very good for everybody's mental health. I think everyone should have a bit of that going on.
Definitely.
Great. Right. We'll call it a night.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.